Welcome to review number 12, the Industrial Revolution. We'll take a closer look at steam trains and transportation in a minute, but for now let's take a look at the working conditions within the factories. The vast majority of the employees hired to work in these factories were women and children. They were hired because they could be paid a lesser wage. The work was monotonous or boring, doing the same thing over and over, and you worked in hot, damp, dusty, and dangerous conditions. Work in the factories meant long hours for very little pay. The normal work week, initially in these factories, you worked 6 days a week for 12 to 14 hours per day. Additionally, your supervisor was paid by how little he could get away with paying you. So fines and punishments were often used to keep your wages down. In this picture, we can see some of these dangerous working conditions. Notice these boys are working on a moving piece of equipment with bare hands in or near the moving pieces of equipment, and also notice their bare feet. There were often serious, sometimes fatal accidents in the factories. There was no system for health care. So if you were injured and unable to work, you were simply out of a job. Now let's take a look at some of the transportation changes that come about during the Industrial Revolution. We will be looking at roads, canals, and their shortcomings, and then how railways or railroads and shipping improve things. Traveling overland by coach or wagon was slow, uncomfortable, and often dangerous. You were limited to how much you could move. The road conditions themselves were significantly bad, particularly in wet weather. There were improvements to the roads, but these were expensive and difficult to maintain, and thus you only found these on major roads near a city. It was much more efficient to ship things by ship. You could carry much more on a ship than you can carry on a wagon. However, shipping along the coasts was affected by tides, the availability of winds, so they weren't always dependable, and finally pirates were always an issue. Additionally, navigable rivers had issues with level or condition of the water. If there was a drought, the water levels dropped and the ships may not be able to reach the piers or leave the piers. Governments began to dig canals between major bodies of water in an attempt to provide a method of moving significant amounts of raw materials. They allowed fresh produce to come from farms to the city and were a much cheaper way to move large, bulky raw materials like iron ore and coal. As industry grew rapidly, it soon became apparent that the canals were simply too slow to keep up with demand. As we can see from this picture, the barges on the canal were not powered and so were pulled along by horses or mules walking on a track next to the canal. An improvement was needed. In 1814, George Stephenson takes a steam engine and fits it on a wagon, and it's designed to take coal from the mines down to the docks to be loaded on ships. It was so effective at this that by 1830, he had developed the first passenger service. Railroads created quite the sensation in England. There were those who objected to trains because of the impact. They were loud, the smoke was smelly, and farmers complained that we can see the cows here running away from the train and that it caused the cows to stop producing milk. Additionally, some doctors warned that it was simply unsafe for humans to travel at these crazy high speeds. We're talking 15 to 20 miles an hour. Eventually, the successes of the railroad overcame all the objections. Thank you for joining us in our review of the Industrial Revolution.